Hey there everyone, welcome back to what is sure to be another epic episode of Confronting Evil. Tonight, Seth and Mackenzie pay a visit to someone that you may remember and others are sure to enjoy learning about. So, if you're ready for tonight's revelations, get comfortable and welcome back the return of Confronting Evil.
The sky was a starless black, and the night still and dark. It wasn't yet too late in the evening. Most houses on this desolate street had windows aglow with their interior illumination. The house they approached was no different, yet seemed entirely disparate. If silence could make a sound, it would emanate from that house with booming effect. Jessie knew that there was something wrong. Hand on her firearm, holster unclipped in case quick reaction was necessary, she motioned for Deputy Lentz to approach the door and call out for whoever may remain inside, never shifting her eyes from the door. Harold Lentz knocked loud and firm upon the solid wood of the front door, and then tried calling out to whoever was inside that the sheriff department was here in response to a 911 call. Deputy Lentz looked back at Sheriff Jesse Philstein, using body language and facial expression to ask for further directions. Jessie reaffirmed her grip on her firearm and nodded to Deputy Lentz, indicating for him to try the doorknob, and that if it was unlocked, to cautiously enter. She would provide him cover, if need be. The door was indeed unlocked, creaking open slowly to reveal the scene within. There was so much blood from floor to ceiling in the foyer where they had entered. The space seemed nearly painted in red. Deputy Lentz stepped back in shock, holding his hand to his mouth. Jessie saw her deputy struggling to maintain composure and formation, so she took it upon herself to take the lead. She had never seen a sight half as gruesome as this, but she had an iron will that little could deter. Jessie wondered whose blood this was, thinking that if all had come from a single person, they would surely have to be dead from, at the very least, blood loss. Jessie followed a slick trail of blood so thick it appeared black, through the foyer and into the kitchen of the home. Both she and Lentz, now behind her, called out for anyone who may hear them that the sheriff's department was now inside the house. Once entering the kitchen, she noticed the blood trail turned right, and so too did she turn to follow. Before her, the red path contrasted the white tile floor that led forward to the back kitchen door, which was apparently agape, leading out into the backyard in the direction of a dense, charcoal-black forest. However, sitting on the back porch, just beyond the door, sobbed a young man, whimpering to himself, his back turned to Jessie. Deputy Lentz raised his weapon, ready to shout commands at the individual, but Jessie raised her hand, implying to him to lower his weapon and allow her to speak. Jessie took one step and spoke, asking him to show her his hands and slowly stand up. Throughout the entire arrest, no matter what question was asked or how many times, the teenage boy said only one thing.
It wasn't me.
Come on, Seth. Give that back. I claimed it.
Mackenzie yelled at her brother.
Yeah, you claimed it like the last 4 slices. Come on, Kinsey. You've already eaten half the pizza.
Seth replied back, refusing to release the still warm slice of cheese pizza into Mackenzie's clutches.
Give it back, dweeb,
she commanded, lunging forward for the slice, missing and falling from the couch that she had been seated upon.
You're such an ass.
Seth chuckled to himself.
Knock it off, you lob-lollies.
A gruff voice boomed over theirs. Mackenzie and Seth momentarily paused their wrestling match to look over and up at the man that they had been staying with the past few days, Eugene Huckleberry Bruce.
Sorry, Huck. This jerk won't give me back my...
Mackenzie began to explain, but was cut off by a loud shh from Huck as he placed an index finger next to his lips and a cell phone up to his ear in his other hand. Mackenzie and Seth had been so consumed with their pizza feud that they failed to notice that Huck's phone had been ringing.
Dweeb.
Mackenzie whispered to her brother.
Ass.
Seth whispered back.
Hello? Yeah, this is he. You don't say. You're sure? I see. Honestly, no, I can't, but I have another solution I think you might find acceptable.
Huck said, looking over at Seth and Mackenzie as he finished his last sentence.
What's going on?
Mackenzie turned and asked Huck as he hung up the phone.
That was a friend of mine, Jessie Philstein. Sheriff Jessie Philstein. She says there's some strange deaths and disappearances in her jurisdiction, and thinks it might be our kind of thing.
Huck responded in kind.
Strange as in how?
Seth asked.
Mostly disappearances, animal mutilations, and a couple deaths.
Huck replied to Seth.
So, some missing people and slaughtered animals? Don't you think that's a job for, I don't know, the actual police? I mean, do they actually do anything?
Mackenzie joked.
Hey,
Huck shouted.
Jessie's a damn fine cop. Does plenty. She wouldn't have called me unless she was confident that there was something unnatural involved.
Well, did she give you anything useful? I mean, what does she think it is?
Seth asked.
Well, I don't know. That's why you're going to be heading out there to investigate. Now, I'll give you directions and her number, and I'll let her know you're coming. Should make the job a lot easier.
Aw, no get-ups or aliases? I had a good one this time, too. Oh well, good old Team S&M are at it again.
Team S and M. Really, Kens?
Seth said, giving his sister an odd look.
No, just... no.
He finished.
Wait,
Seth paused.
you're not coming with us?
Seth asked Huck, confused.
Nah, I'm getting too old to be stepping out of state every 3 days. Besides, this old trailer ain't gonna take care of itself. Need to do some maintenance. You kids run into trouble, you let me know. In the meantime, here.
Huck said, thrusting a scrap piece of paper in Seth's direction. Mackenzie instantly took it out of his hand.
Wait, what? I've never even heard of this place. Is it on a map?
Mackenzie joked.
Yeah, it's a small farming community a couple hours east. Now get ready and get moving. People are dying out there.
Huck explained.
And we're the only ones who can save them, right?
Seth sounded somewhat insincere.
That's right, dweeb. So stop being a little bitch and get your shit together. We're AIS in 30.
Mackenzie demanded, indicating that he had 30 minutes to pack his belongings and get his ass in seat, as it were, before Mackenzie would leave him behind. She never had, and likely never would, but she always threatened. Mackenzie, unlike Seth, was always prepared for a hunt, ready to go at any moment, at a moment's notice. After 10 minutes, Mackenzie was sitting out front in the driver's seat of their dark teal Ford Torino Cobra, patiently awaiting, for the next 17 minutes, for Seth to emerge out from the front door. Huck came out behind him, standing in the entranceway of his home, while Seth loaded his things into the back and climbed into the passenger seat. He waved goodbye and retreated back inside, closing the door behind him. Mackenzie unraveled a bag of what she called road chips threw a handful in her mouth before crunching down, placing the vehicle into drive and pulling from place. Next stop, the very small town of Duanesburg, New York.
Wow. Are we sure this is the police station?
Mackenzie pondered out loud, eyeing the small building not much bigger than and resembling a small country home. The town itself had a population of about 15,000, but by the looks of it, seemed to have a population closer to 10. Houses were largely separated by sprawling fields of buckwheat and infrequent patches of timberland. After Seth had confirmed that this was indeed the police station, the pair stepped from the vehicle and entered. The good thing about it being a small town is that when the deputy behind the counter asked what they were there for, and Seth told her that they were there to see Sheriff Philstein, their wait was only seconds long. Having not much else to do at the moment, Jessie opened the door to the small waiting area and invited the siblings to follow her. Mackenzie and Seth obliged.
So, you two know Huck, huh?
She asked him.
Yeah, we go way back. Huck's like an uncle to us.
Mackenzie replied.
He's a good-hearted soul. Most that have ever met him seem to regard him as a sort of simpleton or such. But I know better.
Jessie added.
Oh yeah? How's that?
Seth asked.
There was something I couldn't explain stalking around this town a while back, killing folks. It was something I still don't fully understand, except for the fact that it wasn't human. The thing had apparently gotten my scent and came a-calling to my house one night. This huge man burst through my door, saving me and mine, while also not only killing this thing, but disposing of it too. Huck's a lot more than what people give him credit for.
Jessie finished.
Okay, so that explains that. But why are we here?
Mackenzie asked, wanting to get to the point.
Well, there's been some disappearances lately, and just the other day, we got this strange call from one of the locals about some demon or monster in his house attacking him and his older brother. When we got to the scene, it was bad. We found no perpetrator, no murder weapon, only the kid who had placed the call, the heaps of gore his older brother. The kid, he swears he didn't do it.
Jessie elaborated.
So, why are we here? Seems like a pretty open and shut case.
Seth asked.
Well, that's the thing. The condition of the body. There's no way the kid could have done all that. The pieces of his brother that remained had been torn from his body, not cleaved or severed. Whatever did this had more brute strength than what that kid could muster. Combine that with the recent string of animal mutilations, disappearances, and strange reports of chanting in the forests on the outskirts, well, I'm sure I don't have to tell you two what's going on here.
Jessie responded.
Has he said anything?
Mackenzie asked as she approached the cell.
Only 2 words. Devil's Springs.
Jessie concluded, standing in front of the locked cell containing the suspect.
When you two are done, give a holler. I'll be right down at the hall,
she explained, before turning back and leaving the pair to ask their questions.
I'm Mackenzie, and this is my brother Seth. Can you tell us what happened?
Mackenzie introduced herself. The kid said nothing.
Come on, kid. We're here to help. Spit it out.
Mackenzie demanded, before Seth placed a hand on her shoulder.
Easy, Kins. Let me handle this. You really have no bedside manner, do you?
Seth questioned. Mackenzie sighed and allowed her brother to take the lead. Seth initiated by telling a story of his own, about how true evil lurks in the shadows, and how no one else knows it, or believes it. But he and Mackenzie do. And after a few minutes of prompting, to both their surprise, the teenager introduced himself as Trey. Seth reassured him that it was okay, and no matter how strange the story, they would believe him. Trey began his unbelievable story. Trey spun a wild tale of a road trip he took with his brother, and a little place they stopped along the way, Devil Springs State Park.
While I was out gathering wood, I come across this shack in the woods that looked like it was made by a homeless person. However, the inside was adorned with drawings and inscriptions, and somehow powered by electricity, underscored by a tape player that chanted words in a unknown dialect into a microphone.
Trey continued.
See, we had heard the exact same chanting on the radio earlier that day, but it just sounded like garbled fuzz and bad reception. So we turned it off, and I didn't think about it until then. But that's when I knew something was terribly wrong with the place. I was about to leave when a figure entered the back door in the one-room shack on the opposite exterior wall. I'll never forget that thing. It was humanoid looking, but mostly covered in this dark, robe-like shroud. Really, the only details of its form that I could make out were those long, claw-like fingers, serrated, shark-like teeth, blackened skin, and those eyes, those horrible eyes.
Trey paused for a moment, gathering his composure.
So, what did you do?
Seth asked him.
I ran as fast as I could back to my brother's car, and I made it, but...
Trey trailed off.
But what?
Mackenzie asked impatiently.
But I saw something on my way back. Something so terrible. I've never told anyone. It was a monster, at least 15 feet tall, and his body was made of all these forms of living creatures, still alive and agonizing. Its body was a mass of surreal tentacles and branch-like limbs, but all fashioned from living things. I can't really describe it. It wasn't natural. I knew that whatever I saw in that shack had called it or summoned it, because some of those drawings inside depicted the shape of this beast, like research notes.
I don't understand, though. What does this have to do with your brother? And how did you escape?
I ran. I thought for sure as I ran that it followed me, but it didn't. Or at least I didn't think so at first.
What do you mean at first?
Well, there were these weird impressions in the ground in those woods, each identical to the last, but completely foreign in shape. But when I saw that amalgamated abomination in the woods on my way back, its hind limbs or legs, the thing left prints in the ground identical to the impressions in the forest. It was its footprints.
I don't understand. What does that have to do with your brother?
Mackenzie asked again, still confused.
Since we've been back, I've been hearing odd chanting on the radio sometimes when I flip through the dial. And I've seen odd impressions in the woods behind my house. Now my brother's dead, and people are missing, and no one will believe me.
Trey finished, now breaking into sobs. Mackenzie and Seth finished conversing with Trey before excusing themselves and thanking him for his time. They believed more of his story than they let on, but still left him with a vague sense of normalcy at the events. With any luck, they could help this kid and simultaneously convince him that all that had transpired was simply misinterpreted and totally mundane, as far as homicides go anyway. They knew that they had told him what they had to get him to speak up. but they also knew that he'd be better off if he could forget the truth about what really lurks in the dark. After conferring with Sheriff Philstein, deliberating all that was told, Mackenzie and Seth accompanied Jesse and Deputy Lentz back out to Trey's family property to recount the events of what transpired there. Are you sure these two are legit? Where do you know them from again? Deputy Lentz questioned his superior regarding the two young adults walking through a crime scene with odd gadgets in hand.
They're friends of a friend. Trust me, let them do their work.
Jesse replied vaguely.
Are you getting anything?
Mackenzie asked Seth, both now inside the living room where there was dried, cakey blood all over everything, covering a portion of nearly every substrate.
No, nothing at all. Are we really thinking ghosts here?
Seth said, staring down at his EMF meter, which was currently reading nothing out of the ordinary.
Hey, Jesse, did you ever find a body? I mean, no body, no crime, right?
Mackenzie yelled over to Sheriff Philstein, who was now standing in the doorway.
Some, I guess, but mostly just Trey, babbling on and on about Devil's Springs. At least now we know what he's talking about.
Jesse considered.
Hey, Kins. What the hell is that?
Seth said, looking through a large sliding glass door and into the direction of the tree line bordering the backyard. Mackenzie had to squint her eyes to focus on the distant form, and then squinted harder to ascertain exactly what it was that she was looking at. Standing just at the forest's edge was a tall and slender figure covered in what looked like a dark fabric ceremonial robe. Neither Seth nor Mackenzie could gather any significant details from a distance, but the flesh beneath its hood appeared charcoal black, framing a mouth of large pointed teeth, and above it what looked like two sinister eyes. One appeared to be a glowing red. Mackenzie and Seth couldn't believe their eyes and even looked at one another to confirm that the other had seen it too, reassuring each that they were not seeing things.
Sheriff, are you seeing this?
Seth asked, pointing back to the large glass portal. Jesse and Lentz stepped closer to the window, and when they both indicated that they saw nothing, Mackenzie and Seth turned back to show them where this thing was standing. But it was now gone. Whatever it was had either sunk back into the trees and underbrush, disappearing from sight, or had disappeared entirely. Neither of them tried to convince the police force that was accompanying them. They knew that whether they believed or not was inconsequential. Seth opened the sliding glass door, and he and Mackenzie stepped through, Jesse and Lentz behind them. As the siblings tried their best to explain what they saw without sounding completely insane, the four of them crossed the backyard and entered the timberland beyond. The forest was as quiet as it was diminishing with light, the sun beginning to dip below the distant horizon. The four of them scanned with heightened senses all around them, but there was nothing immediately erroneous that stood out to them. That is, until Seth spoke up.
Hey, how come there's no forest life? No birds or nothing?
Seth asked out loud to anyone who heard him. Jesse and Lentz pondered at this for a moment, listening with ears pricked for the ambient sounds of a thriving forest. But their ears were each met with a silence.
Yeah, something's not right out here. Keep alert, everybody,
Mackenzie said, while scanning her surroundings for anything queer. After a few moments of looking around the dense forest, the environment ever darkening and transitioning into night, they all decided it would be best to come back the following day, under the protest of Mackenzie. They regrouped and began heading back from the direction that they had come. When the sound of an unearthly and monstrous roar resonated through the forest around them, the sight they turned to reveal their eyes to was both astonishing and horrendously nightmarish. Even for the seasoned hunters, the display of amalgamated flesh and fur, twitching eyes, and screaming mouths created a surreal image so foreign to their minds it took a moment for all of them to mentally catch up. At about 30 feet away, beyond some thick trees and sparse underbrush, standing at about 15 feet tall, bellowed a creature whose outer flesh seemed to be that of all kinds of living things, all melded and twisted together, and although the beast seemed to have a gaping mouth of its own, crowned with a million blinking and moving eyes, the individual outer parts seemed to not belong to it. Mackenzie would go on to explain how the thing looked like some Lovecraftian nightmare that had been stitched together via all sorts of living creatures, and then adorned them as a suit. Tentacles and clawed, digit-like protrusions, all made of living things, still writhing and moaning in agony. Mackenzie pulled a pistol from her denim jacket and fired off a few rounds at the beast. Having no effect, she yelled for them to run, to abscond from the close quarters of the forest. Each turned and began sprinting for the tree line, but being the closest to it, Mackenzie was too late. As the thing gripped her in its claws, she fired off a few more shots at the thing, having absolutely no effect.
Kids!
Seth screamed out. Sheriff Philstein and Deputy Lentz drew their firearms and prepared to shoot, but were halted before they could do so.
Don't hit my sister!
He insisted, causing the police officers to freeze in confusion, unsure of what to do next, faced with such a beast that they could not fire upon.
Keep that thing busy!
Seth yelled, pointing at his sister still fighting for her life. The creature drew her in closer to what could be considered its great mouth, set within a fleshy and furry mound of meat and eyes, serving as the thing's nightmarish head. Mackenzie fired again, causing the creature to reel back in frustration, moving Mackenzie away from its mouth, buying her a few more seconds. While the cops did what they could to keep Mackenzie from being eaten, from grabbing one of the thing's limbs to ineffectively bludgeoning parts of it with their fists, Seth pulled his phone from his pocket and began dialing.
Huck! It's Seth! Listen, I need everything there is to know about killing a higher dimensional being, and I need to know it now!
Seth demanded into the phone. While he listened, hanging on the words of Huck's response, Seth heard the sound of multiple guns firing, causing him to turn and focus on the event playing out before him. Deputy Lentz and Sheriff Philstein, ignoring Seth's request, had begun firing upon the monster's tentacle-like arm that was gripping Mackenzie tight.
No!
Seth screamed as the monster released Mackenzie, dropping her to the forest floor, and in one swift motion, used that forelimb to swing swiftly and strongly in the direction of the police officers. Jesse lunged to the side, diving into the dirt and narrowly missing what would have certainly been a killing blow. Deputy Lentz, however, wasn't quite as lucky or reflexive, instead catching the full brunt of the whipping limb, like being struck by a runaway roller coaster car, causing him to fly 20 or so feet through the air, stopping only upon colliding with a large tree. The crunch of his bones and his contorted body let the others know that such trauma would be enough to cause fatal injury. But the broken stump of the branch protruding from the girthy trunk through his neck, tacking him into place, let the others know that there was no saving him, even if it hadn't. Lentz was absolutely dead, reinforced by his now clouded-over, vacant-looking eyes.
How are you supposed to kill this thing?
Jesse screamed, as the three of them were facing down a colossal abomination, now once again completely refocused on them.
Huck said there isn't anything we can do. We have nothing that can hurt it.
Seth explained, having completed his brief conversation with Huck.
What do you mean? There's no way to kill it? There has to be a way.
Mackenzie rationalized.
He said because the thing is a higher dimensional being, only a higher dimensional weapon can harm it. And I'm pretty sure we don't have anything that fits that bill.
Seth yelled to Mackenzie in response. Jesse and Seth both expected Mackenzie to follow suit and begin running away from the beast, but instead, she charged right at it.
You ass! What the hell are you doing?
Seth yelled once more to his sister, but either she didn't hear him or completely ignored him. The beast reached forward with its other clawed-tipped appendage with purposeful intent of ending Mackenzie swiftly, but just before contact, Mackenzie ducked and slid below its grasp and raised the large black knife that she had pulled from her pocket, slicing off the tip of its claw as she glided across the leafy surface of the forest floor. The beast roared once more, and Seth went to help his sister, but was quickly restrained by Jesse. Seth fought to get free. He had to help Mackenzie, but he was too late. The beast had recovered from its pained recoil and had once again gripped Mackenzie in its spindly grasp.
Mackenzie!
Seth screamed, watching in horror as Mackenzie was brought ever closer to the thing's mouth. Seth was about to fire his gun once more when he saw Mackenzie lift something above her head that looked like a sharp, fur-covered stick. It was when she plunged it into the beast's fleshy lump of a forehead and caused it to screech out in pain that Seth realized what she had done. She had grabbed the bit that she had lopped off, using it to impale the thing once close enough for a killing blow. Its body spastic and flailing in dying panic, the thing dropped Mackenzie to the ground with a thud, whom then backed away from the monster and rejoined her brother and the sheriff, all of which watching on as the surreal terror hissed and growled as its monstrous form began to wither. Pieces of the thing's body, its long and various tentacles, branch-like digits, and all the rest began to slough off its form, as if the binded forms of its various living parts began to unravel, revealing the beast's true self beneath. However, amidst the mists of smoking and rapidly decaying disfigured corpses, now finally allowed to die, a black smoke-like mist arose from the center, or rather, resided there. And as most of these bodies and parts fell away, the more the black mist dissipated. Within moments, there was nothing left but mounds of rapidly decaying flesh and bones that would soon dissolve into the same black smoke.
That really was stupid, you ass. You could have gotten yourself killed.
Seth scolded his sister.
Shut up, dweeb. I knew what I was doing.
Mackenzie replied.
I don't understand. I thought you said we couldn't kill it.
Jesse asked Seth, confused as to what the hell just happened.
Well, actually, I said that we didn't have anything to kill it. I have to give it to my half-wit sister here. That was a pretty good idea,
Seth said, giving Mackenzie a disapproving look.
I don't get it. What was a good idea?
Jesse asked, still confused.
Huck said it was a higher dimensional being, and only a higher dimensional weapon can kill it.
Mackenzie said, holding out the tip of the claw that she still had in her hand for Jesse to see.
Oh, so you used a piece of its own body to kill it. Clever!
Jesse said in amazement.
Yeah, not too bad if I... Damn it!
Mackenzie blurted out.
What's wrong now?
Seth asked his sibling.
I really wanted to keep this.
Mackenzie said, looking sadly upon the now smoking and disintegrating object in her hand. Soon, there would be no trace of the monster left, and Sheriff Philstein would be left to clean up the mess, fabricating a story that would explain her deputy's sudden death and exonerating Trey from his charges. Mackenzie and Seth said their goodbyes, while Jessie offered her thanks and reassurances that she would handle all loose ends on her end. She truly felt honored to meet this pair of siblings that single-handedly saved more lives than they may ever realize. But she knew they had a job to do. The work wasn't over. So, under the cover of night, Sheriff Philstein waved goodbye to Mackenzie and Seth, listening to the muffled sounds of classic rock behind the closed door of their car and watching their taillights grow ever distant until disappearing into a cloak of night. Hopefully, she would get an update soon. The forest was gloomy and bare. As with the woods in that small New York town, there were no birds or ambient forest life to be heard. The ground was barren of sticks and timber, and the trunks of the trees had been stripped of branches at about 10 feet off the ground. The place was in a state park after all, Devil's Springs State Park in North Dakota to be precise, and it was likely that the previous campers had been raiding the forest for firewood. However, the canopy above was lush, lending an atmospheric feeling of twilight to the forest. It was just as Trey described, vacant, eerie, and odd, reoccurring patterns like grotesque, unearthly, and giant footprints across the ground. However, soon, the pair spied a small shack-like shelter with 2 exterior doors beyond a thick conglomeration of tree trunks. The door creaked with unknown age as they pushed it open, revealing the odd contents within. There was a small lamp, unilluminated, sitting upon a small desk against one of the exterior walls. Upon that same desk was a tape recorder, a microphone, and various scraps of paper that matched those tacked around the room in a haphazard fashion. Mackenzie and Seth rummaged through the contents of the desk drawers, finding all objects of interest and placing them in a couple of large packs that they had brought along. This included almost all the sketches and tape recording apparatus. Once gathered outside, the pair poured accelerant from a bottle that they had brought with them at the base of an exterior wall and set the shack ablaze. Standing in the glow of the now raging inferno, Mackenzie and Seth took another look at one of the sketches that they had recovered from this shack. A sketch that neither of them could bring themselves to put away with immediate disregard. They now knew that something was underneath all this, that there was some force pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and whatever it was, it likely had something to do with them as well. For there was no explanation that among the drawings of monsters and incantic runes, that there would be a sketch of a belt made from a wolf's pelt. A belt that looked eerily similar, the same belt that had caused their father's death. They had to know more, and there was only one person that they could think to ask. But one thing was clear. Whatever it was, it would be their duty to end it.
Well, if you enjoyed this episode and want to know more, be sure to check out another story of mine and Trey's backstory called Spare Parts for the Gods. Though remember, the more answers you uncover, the more questions you are sure to have. But don't fret, Seth and Mackenzie will be back at the end of the month when Confronting Evil returns.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.